Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending today's meeting of the Audit Committee. And first, the brief statement that we've probably all become quite familiar with over the last months. Please note this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and a recording will be made available for public viewing following the meeting. Can members please mute their microphones throughout the meeting when not speaking? Helps ensure the quality of audio for all present. Your microphone should be switched on when invited to speak and switched off when you have finished speaking. Please use the raise hand button to indicate if you wish to speak at any point. Could I please ask that officers introduce themselves by confirming their name and role before speaking for the first time on any item. If any members lose connection or have any technical issues during the meeting, please alert the clerk as soon as possible, either using the chat function within the meeting or by email or phone. I will now ask for the clerk to carry out a roll call of the elected members participating today.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Martinello?
Present.
Councillor Neil Benny?
I'm here.
Councillor Graham Houston?
I'm here.
Councillor Alison Laurie?
Present.
Councillor Alistair Majuri?
Present.
Councillor Alistair Tollemache?
Excuse me, I'm present.
That's all 6 members present, Chair.
Thank you. Right, thanks everybody. So without further ado, item 1, apologies and substitutions. There are none. Declarations of interest. I'm not seeing any. No, thank you. Urgent business brought forward by the convener. There is none. Item 4, minutes of the meeting 4th November 2021, pages 1 to 10 for accuracy. I'll just read through the page numbers and please hands up if there is anything. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, thank you very much. Then we can take those as a true record of the meeting. Thank you. Item 5, rolling action log, pages 11 to 14. Pleased to note that actions are complete and all items on the action log are presented for removal. Can I ask if anybody has any questions or queries regarding that? And again, I'm not seeing any hands raised, so thank you, and thanks to everybody involved in that for ensuring the action log is up to date. Next item is item 6, the risk management update. And Gordon, if you could introduce that, please.
Okay, thanks, Convener. It's Gordon O'Connor, Audit Service Manager. Convener, the purpose of this report is twofold. Firstly, it presents the current version of the Strategic Risk Register, which is attached at Appendix 1. The register itself remains largely unchanged since it was last considered by committee in November. It has, however, been updated to reflect discussion at that meeting of committee to build in the potential impact on social care services, excuse me, as a result of difficulties sourcing suitable workers. Secondly, the report proposes work on a more fundamental review of the Strategic Risk Register, the consequences and controls within the register too. That will include workshops and discussions with staff, and it's aimed at really just sharpening and streamlining the risk register. It's currently 30 pages, and while I think it is an accurate reflection of the risks facing the council, I think we could maybe just take a step back and do a bit of work to do a more fundamental deep dive review on the register, which will come back to committee at its first meeting after the elections. Convener, I'm going to stop there if that's okay. I'll do my best to answer any questions on the report, and as you know, there's colleagues on the call who can respond to questions in detail on the register itself.
Thank you. Thank you, Gordon. So any questions? And Alistair, you're up first.
Okay, thank you, Chair. On S1, SR15, to do with the regional, the city deal, we're supposed to have established the Stirling and Clackmannanshire Regional Economic Board. Supposed to be in, I think, before now. It was only 50% towards getting that. I think this is obviously a key thing that needs to be done for the city. Is there a way we can have an update on what the progress to that is? Please.
Right. Do you have a page number, Alistair, for that one?
It's page number 33 at the bottom of that page.
Ah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Brian Roberts, Chief Operating Officer for Infrastructure and Environment. Thanks very much for your question, Councillor Tomac. There has been delays with the recruitment to the Regional Economic Advisory Boards and the SCREAB. That has been discussed with the Joint Committee, and there's an update report going to the Joint Committee, which is next week. But happy to share with members an update off the back of that committee and the actions that are being taken to establish those.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So we will get an update shortly. What impact is this actually having, the delay in this, on the city deal itself? Because this must have been an important aspect.
It has not had a direct impact on the delay of the progression of any of the business cases or the projects for this year, because a lot of that was already underway. But that's a very important point that you've raised, and it's a point that's been raised by other members on the Joint Committee, including Stirling Council representatives on that committee. And committee was reassured by the collective partnership officers last time that the focus would go in to make sure that that was established. As I say, there has been recruitment challenges, but the intention is to have it established. It is absolutely critical for the rest of the deal, there's no doubt about it. And a lot of the focuses of those two groups was to ensure that there was business representation involved in the preparation of the deals and how the benefits of the deals would be delivered across the region area. So there is a focus, albeit there has been a delay because of recruitment. But as I say, we can get you an update after the Joint Committee, and happy to share that with all members as well.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, but I'll leave it for the people to come in. No,
Alistair, you carry straight ahead.
Okay. Oh, well, I was saying that because I'd actually lost my place. It's more convenient. So please allow somebody else to ask another question first. Thank you.
Okay. Neil's hand has gone up. There we go.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to build on that point about SR15. Brian, I mean, obviously I'm on the Joint Committee, and I've raised my concerns there about the significant delays with regards to the establishment of the Economic Advisory Board and the Enterprise Forum. I suppose the biggest risk here is not to timescales of delivery. It's actually to the oversight, scrutiny, and the advice that we would normally expect to get. And certainly when we set these, when we set up the Joint Committee, it was the expectation that these groups would advise the Joint Committee from a business perspective. And I suppose for me the big risk here is one where the business cases and the development and the delivery of the projects is going ahead without that advice, oversight and scrutiny. I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit just about is there any remedial action that's being taken in the background to ensure that there is oversight and scrutiny of those business cases and plans from the business community specifically, because I know that obviously there's been these vacancies on the Joint Committee for the business reps as well. Can you talk to that?
Thanks very much for your question, Councillor Benny. And as you say, you were one of the councillors that raised that at Joint Committee, and you're right to do so. The involvement of the business community and oversight, I suppose, has come in at the individual project development stage or the individual business case stage, rather than that helicopter view that the two boards have been set up to do. So I would say that's where the gap is, and that feed in directly to Joint Committee. But with a need to the partners, that engagement has happened at the development of the business cases. So at a project and business case level rather than at a strategic deal level. And we've acknowledged on the last Joint Committee that that's where there still is the gap, hence the focus of trying to get things established and move forward. So despite some of the recruitment gaps that's in there, obviously these need to be set up and then the recruitment gaps filled rather than wait any longer until all posts are filled on those committees.
I mean, thinking about two of the significant, well, I mean, there's sort of 4 significant business cases that have come through so far, and certainly 2 of them have had that input because we set up this cultural partnership, which we recruited to, and that's been reasonably good. The other one with regards to the spend on the class capital sum was fairly non-controversial anyway, but the 2 university schemes, Fourth Era and the Environmental Innovation Centre, which came to joint committee, and those are public meetings, so I'm not saying anything out of class here. What oversight, what assurance can we as Stirling Council get as one of the partners, get that those got that level of business scrutiny in terms of the economic development that will come from that? Because the expectations obviously is about job creation, is about regeneration, and it's about investment. Those specific ones where it's not been Stirling Council or Club Manager Council that have been leading on them, when it's been the university partners that have been leading on that, where's that input been coming in there? Can you talk to that?
Councillor, maybe pull in colleague Stuart Oliver at this stage, because he's probably easier to answer that question from a Stirling Council economic development point of view.
Hi everyone, Stuart Oliver, Senior Manager for Economic Development and Communities. Apologies, Councillor Benny, you're breaking up there on my laptop. It's been a bit dodgy today. Could you just repeat that for me? Sorry. Yeah,
so Stuart, what this is about is the you know, I mean, the joint committee's heard at the previous meetings information about what oversight's gone into the business cases from the business community, because obviously without the Regional Economic Board and the Regional Enterprise Forum, there isn't that, you know, assurance from the point of view of what that Stirling Council has set up or thought it was setting up when we set up these initial structures. And I suppose what I'm getting at here is that 2 very significant business cases have come through, and they got scrutiny at joint committee. They got scrutiny within the partner that was delivering them, Stirling University. I wanted to understand that business investment and that kind of scrutiny in terms of whether we're going to get the jobs and the investment and so on and so forth into those from the business community, whether you can talk to what's actually going on there. I'm thinking about Fourth Era and the Environmental Innovation Centre.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So in terms of the engagement and input into that, then obviously that some of that was detailed in the cases that the university brought forward, and I think we need to kind of look at that in terms of, you know, what the overall kind of engagement plan was from the 2 councils' point of view. We obviously had a look at that and scrutinised that against what they're anticipated to bring to the area and kind of fed into that. But I'd have to get more information from the university themselves in terms of the depth and range of engagement with industry on that. Obviously, I'm making the assumption that it was fairly significant, the big projects. But obviously the SCREAB and the REF would be significant helps to that in terms of guiding the development of that and making sure that regionally and nationally they're going to have the impact that they need to have. And there's obviously still plenty of time for them to have that kind of influence and guiding hand, if you like, in terms of the voice and view of industry.
Neil, does that, yeah? You're done, yeah? Okay, thank you. Alistair, are you okay to go with your second question?
Yes, I am. And it is SR 32 on page 25 about structures and bridges. The first comment I'd like to make is I don't think the report is up to date, because on the section when something was being taken council in December, the development of the bridges and structure asset management plan, that was, I believe, and I was at the council, people were, that was taken. So that's not okay. That's actually being completed, that one. So, but what I have is on the recruitment of the posts, which is a very crucial thing for the council to make sure that we have staff in place to do this for us. Please can we have an update on where we are, because it's not too long before we get to the end of March. So are we in the place as a council to have these 2 contract posts or whatever number it is actually up and running actually by that date.
Okay, thanks, Alistair. Bruce.
Thanks, Councillor Earl, and thanks, Councillor Tolomash, for the question. It's Bruce Reekie, Senior Manager for Environment and Place. Firstly, Councillor Tolomash, you're absolutely right. The last review date for the action was back in October, and obviously since then we've been working our way through the actions that are listed there, and we'll pick up a number of the progress points in due course when we next review it. In terms of the actual contract officers, we've not progressed that at the moment. The focus has been on the recruitment of the temporary professional staff to backfill the vacancies. We've actually been successful in actually starting another member of staff just within the new year. We've also been able to retain some of the consultants. I think that was mentioned in one of the actions there, to accelerate the inspections as well. So there's been a bit of a change around in terms of being able to recruit into some of those post consultants as well. However, certainly the longer term view is the recruitment of the contract officers going forward. That's been slightly mitigated by the use of consultants at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. So you can reassure us, Bruce, that there are sufficient staff to do the job that we need to do at the moment.
Yes, we have resources in place at this point in time, Councillor Tolomash.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Can I just ask on a similar vein, it is relating to SR 31, which is on page 22, which the covering report advises has been expanded due to discussion at the last audit committee around recruitment and concerns around that for social care. Marie, I was just wanting to ask if there is any update on the recruitment from that perspective relating to the posts identified in the risk.
Yes, I'm pleased to say that we are interviewing on the 1st and 2nd of February for qualified social worker posts. I know that we've got 8 applicants, so hopefully I'm going to get something from that. I'm shortlisting for a policy post, and we've also done the job descriptions for the practice educator post, which has gone out to advert. And there's one other, it's the practice development post, which we've done the job description for and is also out to advert on it. So for the policy officer post, there's 4 applicants, one of whom looks quite a strong applicant to date. So I'm making the decision on that hopefully before the weekend. Right. So the family support worker and home care posts for the intensive family support team, I met with the team about that. We had a discussion about what we actually need from those posts, and the service managers are beavering away just now, working up the job descriptions so that they fit what it is that we need to actually keep the promise and keep children out of the system and out of home supervision arrangements. So it's very much a priority for us, Councillor Earl, as you can imagine, but a lot of work for everybody. But yes, we're getting there.
Good. Thank you, Marie. Could I just ask you to identify yourself for the purposes of the recording?
Sorry, my apologies, and I've just seen that I didn't put my camera on either. Apologies. My name is Marie Valenti, Chief Social Work Officer, Stirling Council.
Hello, nice to see you. Thank you for that.
Sorry about that.
And thank you for the answer as well. That's appreciated. Okay, Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just SR02, page 22 and 23. It's it's effectively the IT risks. I was looking at this. I saw that there were quite a number which had passed their due date. The implementation of the new disaster recovery solutions, the maintenance of the investment in the critical infrastructure, the external pen testing, the secure email gateway, the automated patching and upgrades to technology, and the license for age technology is adequate. I'm just wondering, is this just a factor of the risk register not being updated, or is there some significant delay? Is there some issue which is causing a delay there?
Yep. Hi, Isabel McKnight, Chief Operating Officer, Communities and Performance. There's no delay. It's just the delay is in the updating of the document, Councillor. Yeah.
Right.
That's fair enough. I kind of thought that's probably what it was, but that's fine. Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that. Do I have any other queries or questions from members? I'm not seeing any hands up at the moment. Okay, in that case, I'd just like to say I'm looking forward to the review. I think that's timely and are going to be a useful exercise, and the conversations that take place with relevant services and offices around that, I'm sure we will see actually a good piece of work come back from that. So I'm looking forward to that, and as Gordon has said, that will come back at the first audit meeting within the new council after the elections, and obviously we will see, could be all of us, might not be, I don't know, I've no idea who's going to be on the audit committee then, but it will be useful to have that piece of work brought forward. So thank you, Gordon and his team, for progressing that. On that basis, are we happy to note and take assurance from the work being undertaken on the strategic risk register? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. Item 7, internal audit update report, pages 49 to 70. Gordon.
Yep, thanks, Convener. It's Gordon O'Connor, Audit Service Manager. This paper provides an update on our 21-22 internal audit work. As you can see from paragraph 2.1 on page 50, 8 assignments have been completed, 7 are well underway, and 7 are currently at the planning stage. On that basis, we are well on track to substantively complete our plan of work, and will certainly have completed enough work to allow me to provide a balanced and evidence-based assurance in the annual assurance report that again will come to the first meeting of the committee after the elections. This report also summarises the current position in relation to those high priority audit actions, audit recommendations which are outstanding beyond their original target date. As you can see from paragraph 2.11, there are currently 16 such actions. They're listed at Appendix 3. And as with the previous paper, there are colleagues on the call who can respond to any specific questions members may have on those. Could I please just finish by referring you to the recommendation on page 49, asking members to take assurance from internal audit work undertaken. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Gordon. And as I say, we have just for us from an internal audit perspective, the leader one. There are others that are very close to completion. I know Gordon and his team have been working hard to do that. They will be completed shortly. Our final stages, they were just unable to sneak under the wire for this meeting, but the work is progressing at pace, and as Gordon has outlined. Can I ask if anybody questions and queries on the internal audit report or appendix for high risk items outstanding? Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Another successful leader operation. No questions on that. My questions were on Appendix 3. The first one, the first high risk one there has been sitting for quite a while. It was originally targeted for the 30th of September. This is with regards to ensuring the correct way of processing expenses, and the most recent service update speaks of awaiting the completion of a job evaluation process, which will hopefully come to an end in the next few months. I didn't understand the connection between that and the risk. This was supposed to be done back in September 2018. It was identified as a high priority action, and it hasn't been undertaken yet. And now there's talk of a job evaluation. Can someone talk me through that? It says Communities and Performance Team Leader Workforce. I'm not entirely sure who this question would be aimed at, I'm afraid.
No, nor am I. Isabel.
Yes, unfortunately I can't give you the answer today, but I will get the background and provide some kind of written response. Clearly I'm just managing that service on an interim basis. It would be someone like Pamela who would be managing that, and I know that we've had an internal review of HR and OD, and we do need to review some of our processes internally. And again, it's not an excuse, but we have had a critical focus on job evaluation, and some of that has been halted due to kind of the high sickness levels. But I'll come back to you with something in writing.
Okay.
Right. So, Bruce, I see you put your hand up on that one.
Thanks, Councillor Earl. No, really, Isabel's covered off what I was going to say. Obviously, just within the agreed action, it does make reference to employees within the Roads and Land Service, and then goes on to talk about the job evaluation. I'll obviously link in with Isabel and obviously colleagues within payroll to give that full response, Councillor Earl.
Thank you.
Chair, I mean, I'm a wee bit concerned about that. I mean, I mean, I can completely understand, you know, like the position the officers are in here, but you know, I mean, effectively, this, you know, you look at the action, it just seems like an admin thing, you know, that we're just good to make sure we're using the right form for the claims for the mileage claims for Road and Land Services employees. It doesn't strike me as being something which they should have kind of slipped by 3 years. But I'm sure we can await an answer from the service, because it may be that there is some particular issue which is holding up the delivery of that.
Yes, I think you've asked the question, Neil. It was one I was going to ask on that particular one anyway.
Sorry.
No, I'm glad you asked it, because it does stick out, that one. When it's 3 years, a target date of September 2018 on this, when you look at the risk. So you know, what we wanted, these high priority action, the outstanding ones, coming to committee in the form of this appendix, so that we could keep sight of them, so that they were at committee, so that they could keep receiving scrutiny, because we need to see some of these come off this list, to be honest with you, and you know, this is one that we will be wanting to come back on, I would imagine, at every meeting subsequently, to see until it's actually been achieved. So if there could be some detailed information on that, and going into the details of that risk as to why we are where we are 3 years on with it, that would be appreciated, and maybe circulated to all members, I think would be helpful on that one. Isabel, if that could be done, I'd be appreciated. I have sorry, I was going to go to Graham. Graham's hand has gone up, so I will allay my own.
Thank you, Chair. Just when we're getting that explanation, just in that column on the agreed actions, there's that little sentence that says the service should ensure that the current incorrect practice ceases. So I'm seeking assurance that the incorrect practices haven't been continuing since September 2018. So when we're getting that report, I think it's important. Like others, I don't understand the link between a job evaluation and changing a practice. However, I'm sure that will be explained to us when we get it. But I really would like assurance that incorrect practices have actually ceased, and ceased when this was identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Yes, a good point, and that needs to be specifically addressed in that information. Thank you. Yes. Isabel, was there anything you wanted to come back on that before we moved on?
Yes, I just wanted to give assurance that because it is a bit confusing. I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Houston. It's confusing myself. And I know there's a lot of work has been done in terms of the job evaluation across Bruce's area and roads. But you're absolutely right. You need assurance that those faulted processes have been amended. So you please have my assurance that you'll get that as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Isabel. Just moving on then down the page on this, I'd just like to raise the next 5. Which are all for the Health and Social Care Partnership. They all have original target dates of, well, October 18, March 2019, between the 5 of them, those 2 dates, relating to option 2 on the self-directed support, what have you. But I mean, there's 5 risks there that are 3 years, you know, not been attended to, and they were marked as high priority risks. So I don't know who's here who can speak to that, but I'm really concerned about that we have these 5 risks that are sitting there with such long overdue dates. We don't have Anne-Marie is not here. So I'm a bit concerned we can't go into the details of that today. Isabel?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think there's anyone here from the Health and Social Care Partnership, but Marie and I will take an action to go back to the service and provide a comprehensive update at the earliest opportunity.
Yes, please. On those 5, Isabel, again, information to all members of the committee as early as possible, and that might generate further queries and questions depending on what we get back, but I think we need to ask for that next layer of explanation on those 5 would be helpful. The other point, sorry Marie, your hand's gone up.
Yeah, Marie Valente, Chief Social Work Officer. So the self-directed support coordinator post, that is actively being recruited to. I can say that from the meetings that I've been at. A lot of these are due to a lot of the delays are due to COVID-19 and the frontline pressures that service is under. But totally accept that those dates are quite significant. And as Isabel has said, happy to get back to you alongside Isabel with an explanation.
Yeah, thank you. And I suppose the point I'd make with the target dates, those were the original target dates for completion, which all well predate COVID. So, you know, they weren't anywhere close to being completed by their original dates. And then obviously with COVID coming in subsequently, and that's inevitably further had an impact. But I look forward to the information on those. Thank you both for that. Right, the other part of that I'd like to try and get an understanding on is how the Health and Social Care Partnership risk register works with the local authority and NHS risk registers on this. How much coordination and cross-referencing and information sharing goes on between those different risk registers that all have a responsibility in this area and all have an interest in this area, and are these risks identified in the Health and Social Care Partnership risk register, or are they just sitting in ours? That's something I'd like to know as well. So those, if that can all be explored, please, I'd like to get some detail on that for everybody. Neil, you were next up, and then Councillor Tolomash.
Yeah, Chair, I was going to bring up the issue about the social care stuff as well, but you beat me to it this time. The thing I would quite like assurance on this. Now, this is one of these things that you know you read about in the national press. I don't have any evidence of this locally. That there is a degree, and it would be entirely reasonable if there was, because of COVID-19, there is a degree of prioritisation within social care packages to make sure that the people who need the help the most are getting the help the most when there is a constraint on resources. So what I would like to make sure is get some assurance from the Health and Social Care Partnership that the fact that these risks have not been addressed is not exacerbating that issue, that we are able to identify fully what all of the care package needs are for our citizens, especially in the context of a constraint on that and that inherent prioritisation that then has to happen within that. I think it's entirely reasonable that some things are put on hold because of COVID, because especially in social care, everybody's mad busy, and that's absolutely as it should be. But and understandable. But the making sure we've got the right information is really key to informing those decisions. So I'd like some assurance on that.
Okay, thank you, Marie.
So work is ongoing. I attend, by coincidence, every Thursday morning. So I'm just out of one. It's originally the Care Home Assurance Group. So that group has now been expanded to cover care at home. So the data is currently being looked at. by Phil Watt, who is in the process of presenting significant information to us about numbers of care packages that are required, the extent of those care packages that are required, and the waiting list that we currently have. So by way of reassurance, that data is currently being collated and it is being examined by the Chief Social Work Officers and the Chief Officers Adult Social Care, and also the Directors of Nursing. So that work is ongoing.
Sorry, can I come back there, because some of the issues which are in here are about the gathering of data, and if they're looking at data which has a flaw in it, then they're going to have flawed outcomes coming out of it. And I suppose it's that thing about making sure that we can get assurance that the data that's going into that decision-making process is collected properly. There's the financial assessments for option 2. There's the mechanism for service users to monitor and manage the payments. All of this stuff will be producing data which needs to come back to the service for them to inform that element that you're doing there. So it's probably that element that I'm more interested in getting the assurance on, Marie, because I know what you say there gives me a lot of assurance in terms of the officers taking good rational decisions, but they can only do so if the data is coming in a proper way.
So that's the data that backs up these concerns that are on this report. Okay, so I would have to get back to the service to get that information. Okay.
Okay, again, well, thank you, Marie. We're going to get this comprehensive detailing of this, and we can factor that into that information that's going to go to all members. Alistair.
Thank you. It was not so much the detail, but okay, the system that has allowed us to get into this situation where things are so out of date, even if you go back before the COVID. And this is maybe a question for Gordon, actually. What systems can we put in place to assure that if things are out of date, there are triggers and things within the services who are involved to make sure that these are resolved? So clearly there are other factors here, but we probably need to have a system. Or would you say to us that we do have a proper system in place at the moment?
Thanks, Councillor. I think we do have a system in place at the moment. Every 6 months we undertake a formal what we call action tracking programme, whereby we contact all services asking for updates on all the recommendations which we've made over the past period. For the most part, Councillor, the responses that come back from services confirm that appropriate action has been taken. We then choose a sample of those and physically verify the evidence. So we get assurance as an internal audit team that the recommendations have indeed been implemented. I guess what you see in front of you today are those residual recommendations where we don't yet have that assurance from services. I think this is, we're talking about 16 recommendations being outstanding here. And when we think about the context of the number of recommendations that we make within the team and the number of reports that we complete over the years, this is a small number of recommendations that are outstanding. So I want to give you some comfort there. But I think also by bringing these recommendations to committee, this is kind of the back end of the process. So we've chased the services, we've asked for updates, and these are the ones where, largely for legitimate reasons, there's still action to be undertaken to complete what was recommended. So I'm fairly comfortable that there's a process in place, Councillor, and I think it's helpful to have discussions like we've had today around those that do remain outstanding, because I think it just brings them back to the table and brings them back into focus.
Thank you. Thank you, Isabel.
Yes, I just wanted to say that support Gordon in terms of Gordon's processes. I think there's a vacuum here, and I think that myself and Marie, need to take that message back to the Health and Social Care Partnership to afford Gordon and the committee the information that's being required today. So I think there is a vacuum, and we do need somebody from the Health and Social Care Partnership to be present at Audit Committee on a regular basis. So I will feed that back as a senior leader of this organisation to my peer, Anne Margaret. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Isabel. And I think it's an important point, because I have no doubt at the next Audit Committee in the new cycle, we'll have in the interim received the information that we've been asked for, and you've kindly said will be collated between Marie and yourselves from the HSCP, and that's going to go into more detail. I fully expect there to be a quite detailed conversation and discussion around these 5 risks at that next meeting. So it's probably very important that someone's there for that. So I appreciate that. Neil.
Yeah, I was moving off the social care one, Martin, unless there's anything else. Did you finish there? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, the other one that was a little bit worrying to me, and not so much, but because I think there has been a decision made, but I just wanted to get a little bit more explanation about it, was a specific one on the password protocol policy and the consistency applied. So the risk that was identified was a consistently applied and robust password protocol, and I know that this is something which a lot of organisations, especially large organisations with a diverse range of applications can sometimes struggle with, but it is a really important aspect of ensuring that there's no data breaches or other security problems in our systems. It says in the most recent service update the rollout has been delayed due to higher priority work and resource constraints. A project is being to be established. I'd just like to understand. I mean, the current target date is March 2022. Is that still is that still expected to be met? And the original target date was 2020, March 2020, which obviously there was COVID and there was a whole host of things going on there. But I'd like to understand what the thought process in the service was that said, okay, well, we can delay that one until a later date. So I'd just like to understand the thought process that went into that decision.
Yeah. What page is that, Neil?
Oh, sorry, it's page 63, Martin. It's the one at the top of page 63.
One at the top of page 63. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Who would we have to come back on that one? Isabel.
Yeah, it's myself again. So please take assurance. Any focus was in terms of our work plan was around risk. Neil, and that's what we did during COVID in terms of IT. So it was really important that we could allow officers to work from home where we could and have the technology and the capacity and the risk around it managed. So that's really why this has been delayed. We're still on target for March 22. Having said that, there's still some pressures because we're all not back in the office. And if there's any delay, it will be a matter of weeks. It won't be months. So I'm quite confident and quite assured. We've purchased some software. I can give you some of the detail, the further detail around the specifics when I have a conversation with Graham and his team. But please be assured that that's on target.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions or queries on this? I'm not seeing any hands up. Thank you everybody for that useful discussions, and look forward to the information on those 2 areas that we'll be receiving. So therefore, can I ask members if they're happy to take assurance from the information and note the report? Yes, thank you. Thank you all. So next item on the agenda is item 8, which is the ALEOS and strategically funded bodies overview of governance reported in 2020-21. Gordon.
Thanks, convener. It's Gordon O'Connor, Audit Service Manager. I'll present this report on behalf of the Chief Governance Officer, convener, who, as you mentioned earlier, is attending essential returning officer training today. So this paper, as you say, covers ALEOS and strategically funded bodies. The background to the report is summarised in the paragraphs at the top of page 72, and the report specifically addresses members' May 2019 request that reports be provided on an annual basis on the governance reporting arrangements for each ALEO and strategically funded body. I guess the report's fundamentally about the Council's ability to demonstrate best value and following the public pound to the point where it's spent. On that basis, Appendix 1 to the report sets out each ALEO and strategically funded body along with the details of the governance reporting arrangements, including the date of the last and next reporting date to the relevant decision-making committee. As with previous reports, colleagues are on the call to deal with any detail on the appendix. I'll also do my best to answer any questions you might have. And can I just finish again by drawing your attention to the recommendation on page 71, which asks you to consider the governance reporting framework set out at Appendix 1. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Gordon. Yes, always a use. This is a very useful report to have. I remind members that from an audit perspective, committee perspective, we are ascertaining and checking the governance arrangements in parts across the council to ensure these organisations are reported on a regular basis. Neil.
Yeah, Chair, this seems to be working very well now. The only concern I have is that the Stirling University Innovation Park hasn't had a report to committee for, well, when it gets to September 22, it'll probably be about 3 years. I think 2019 was probably the last report. I think an organisation of such strategic importance, especially in the context of the City Region deal and other activities and actions that are going on, it is a matter of regret, I think, that it hasn't been able to be reported to committee. Not necessarily looking for a response for officers, because I can see they've annotated the reason for this is because of COVID-19, because of the follow-up, and then the wide-ranging review of ALEOS across the Economic Development Service. Like I say, I just think that it bears mentioning that everything else is being reported regularly to committee, and that is a good thing. It's actually helping to make sure that these organisations are all aligned to council strategic priorities. But an organisation as important as SUIP really shouldn't be sitting as long as that without a report to committee. But that's more of a comment than a question.
Yes, I think, and take it as that comment. I think we'd all share that and recognise the situations in place that have led to that. But as you say, across the piece here, I think we can take assurance that there's good regular reporting in the vast majority of cases, and where there isn't, there is a explanation. I'm sure that we'd all want to encourage, and I'm sure officers will, that it's very important that that report comes to committee as early as possible in the new cycle, as said in September later this year. Also note that we are that the thinkware will be removed from it, and as will the Stirling District Tourism as well. So they will both be removed from the report. Can I ask, does anybody else have any other comments or questions about this? It all seemed rather straightforward to me from a reporting perspective, and we can take assurance from what's happening. I'm not seeing any other questions or queries. No, on that basis, can I ask people to note the report and take assurance from it? Excellent. Thank you very much. Item 9, corporate fraud update, pages 79 to 84. Gordon.
Thanks, Convener. Me again, I'm afraid. Members will recall that a corporate fraud plan for this year was considered and agreed by Audit Committee in May last year. Updates on progress with that plan have been brought to committee in both September and November, and I think we were able to demonstrate that good progress has been made on the proactive and fraud prevention elements of that plan. The report before you today focuses on the fraud investigation work stream, and really it just aims to give you a flavour for the type and volume of referrals which are considered by the team. Paragraphs 2.3 and 2.4 on page 80 set out the routes via which people can raise concerns with the team, and Appendix 1 provides some summarised information on the types of referrals received since the start of April. Similar to previous papers, I'll just ask members to note the recommendation on page 79, and happy to try and answer any questions that you might have. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Gordon. Neil, followed by Alistair.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just more out of interest than anything else, Gordon, page 83, the sources of referral, internal 35, external 116. See the external ones, are they mostly coming from other agencies, or are they actually, are most of them coming in from this fraud hotline and members of the public phoning up to tell us about potential frauds? And if it is coming from members of the public, reporting potential fraud, I mean, I know it would probably be a fraught legal issue, but do we give people feedback when we've about their queries?
There's generally two streams, Councillor. We get some requests in from Police Scotland about ongoing inquiries, which they're working on, and they come to us asking for information under the Data Protection Act. Most of the external referrals are coming from members of the public, submitted via the form on the external website. In terms of feeding back, we don't do that routinely. Probably the primary reason for that, Councillor, is that the form allows members of the public to raise their concerns anonymously. So in a lot of cases, even if we were in a position and even if we were able to feedback, we don't know who to go back to.
Okay, yes, fair enough. Alistair.
Thank you. So my question is also on page 83, and it's to do with the COVID grant. I know there's been a lot in the national press about the amount of potential fraud that's been for the COVID grant, and it's in, okay, the mind boggling kind of a lot of money. But when we look at doing grants and we look at fraud, is there a way we do spot checks? So my question really is, okay, do we just rely on people saying, okay, we think there's something suspicious here? Or are we more proactive? I know this is a lot of work for staff to get the COVID out, but so are we more proactive and say we will sample, okay, 1 in 100 or something like that? In a way to stop that, because that has been in the news quite a bit.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Yeah, I mean, the volume of work, as you say, involved in processing the grants was significant across a number of services. I think that within Stirling Council, we understood and recognised the risk of potential fraudulent applications early on. Each of the teams who processed the grant applications and made a decision on payment worked really closely with our corporate fraud team here. So as well as you say, doing spot checks on applications, the teams processing the applications were also able to tap into our corporate fraud team if there were any queries. So if there was something that didn't look quite right in relation to an application, whether it be a bank account or just something that just didn't sit right, they were able to come to our corporate fraud team and seek assurance on that. Our corporate fraud team, in turn, are really linked into a group called SLAIG, which is a national investigators, local authority investigators group. That national group is also really quite active during the peak of the COVID grant processing period. There's a lot of good information shared around authorities about potential organisations and individuals who were submitting fraudulent applications. So we were, I think, as on the ball as we could be at the time, Councillor. I think inevitably, as we've seen at a national level, there will have been claims that will have fallen through the wire. Some of the fraud referrals which come into us as a team now do still relate back to COVID grants, and we have recently passed on a couple of instances to the police where we have got concerns about the nature of the grants that were paid. But I think in terms of assurance to this committee, I think the fraud team, the audit team and services themselves worked really closely during the processing period at high pace and when people were really stretched. And we are now still actively following up on any concerns that are raised with us now and passing anything that might seem a bit suspicious onto Police Scotland. I hope that gives you some assurance.
It does. Okay, thank you very much for that, because that does give me assurance.
Thank you. Thank you both. Can I just ask a general point that follows on from Neil's point about the potential for or otherwise for feedback? When you look on the council the website, the actual capacity to report fraud form is actually pretty high profile. It's under the report it drop down menu, and it's there, report fraud. So it's reasonably logical process, two-step process to get yourself to the form, I think. But when you submit, though, and it does ask you if you wish to remain anonymous or not, so you do have the option for not remaining anonymous. I imagine most people do. But once you've submitted that form, what do you get from a point of view of an automatic response to that? Because my thinking there is, if it's like a lot of the other forms, it's the response is just an acknowledgement. So actually, it was something like reporting fraud. Is there capacity to building, if it's not already there, a bit more information, appropriate information as to the processes that then take place internally from someone who's reported fraud in a general sense, and obviously, you know, lots of sensitivity there, and acknowledging the fact that information is you know, private and privileged and what have you, but actually just giving some kind of narrative as to what then happens with that inquiry.
I think that's a really interesting question, Councillor, because no, in some respects, publicising the outcome of fraud investigations and demonstrating the fact that as an organisation we're on top of and we're alive to the fraud risk is a good thing, and could be and should be looked upon as a good news story. In terms of feeding back, I don't think that the forms as they stand ask the referrer to provide, for example, an email address, which would allow us to go back to them on. That's something I'll take away and have a think about, Councillor. I think the direction I would like to perhaps move in is that if there are particular trends or particular types of fraud which we're seeing more often than others, some generic communication about that using their social media channels. So if there is an issue around, well, I don't know, cannabis farms in a particular community, then we work with the relevant team within the council to put out the appropriate publicity to raise people's awareness of that as a type of fraud, rather than perhaps go back on the specifics of cases, which, as you rightly say, can be sensitive. I'm not sure if that's answered your question, Councillor.
That's opened up an interesting strand, which I think is worth exploring. But what I was more thinking about there was when people get a general acknowledgement, when you've hit the submit button and it says, thank you for your inquiry. When you're submitting a fraud query, is there capacity in that generic acknowledgement narrative to have a bit of information about what happens to fraud inquiries and how that is treated within the council and partner agencies, to give people just a bit of information of, you've hit the send button, off it's gone into the ether, and you'll probably never hear anything more about it because it's anonymous or whatever, but actually this is what happens to it. It doesn't just disappear.
Okay, I think that's a good point. It doesn't happen at the moment, and I'll look into how we can improve that part of the process.
Okay, thank you. Graham.
Thank you. Could I ask Gordon, just this report takes us up to the end of November, but can you tell us whether you think you've seen any kind of significant rise in reports of potential fraud, because people have been working in lockdown different ways, lots of claims have been made for the support grants, etc. So has there been a rise in reporting incidents?
Councillor, I think that this is really the first year that we've collated this type of information, so I'm afraid I'm not in a position to confirm for sure one way or the other. What I would say was that I think the types of fraud that are perhaps being perpetrated have moved very much online to the IT realm and to cyber fraud. I think we've seen a real increase in the sophistication of the type of phishing emails that fraudsters use. You know, they really look really convincing when they're asking, for example, for bank accounts to be changed, for us to transact. You know, so fraudsters are becoming more alive to the opportunities online. They were on COVID grants like that. So I think it's a good question, and I think it's something that over the coming year we would be looking to measure, just to see what the trends are in terms of both the number of frauds which have been reported, but also the types of frauds which are coming to light.
Thank you.
Thank you both for that. I'm not seeing any other hands up on this. On that basis, are we happy to note and take assurance from the contents of the report? Thank you. Thank you all. Next item is item 10, public interest disclosure brackets whistleblowing policy annual report. And Gordon, I think that's yep. You again.
Yep, thanks, convener. Again, presenting this on behalf of the Chief Governance Officer. Just to start off, I guess members will be aware that a revised and updated whistleblowing policy was approved by Finance and Economy Committee in November That policy requires the Chief Officer of Governance to maintain a register of concerns raised under that policy and to bring an annual report to committee summarising those concerns. So that's the background to why this paper's here. As you can see from paragraph 2.3 on, I think it's page 86, we only had one whistleblowing concern raised over the course of 2021. That disclosure was considered by the Chief Officer of Governance, who concluded that at the time it didn't fall within or satisfy the terms of the policy. I think just to bring this round in a bit of a circle, I think it's fair to say that we recognise that there's some work needed to republicise the policy, just to make sure that staff are aware of its existence and the fact that it's been brought up to date. And the report covering activity over the course of this year will be brought back to committee at this meeting in 2023, which seems unbelievable. But thanks, and any questions, I'll do my best.
Thank you, Gordon. Can I ask, does anybody have any queries, comments, questions on this report? It all seems very straightforward to me, and is doing its job. Gordon, the reporting of it is keeping us up to date with this. I take a lot of assurance from this and the policies that are in place that sit around this as well. So if I'm not seeing any questions or queries, in that case, I'm going to ask people to note and take assurance from that report. Thank you very much. Thank you. Agreed. And last item on the agenda, item 11, Stirling Council earmarked reserves. And for this, we have Brian Richardson is introducing this, as George Murphy is away at the same important event as Julia. So Brian, over to you.
Thank you, Convener. So Brian Richardson, Finance Business Partner. This report is a follow-up from a report that went to the Audit Committee in November. Appendix 1 now includes some contextual information around each of the balances, along with the service timescales to spend the balances. I've got colleagues on the call that will help me try and answer any particular questions around any of the balances, but the committee's been asked to note the contents of the report and the balances. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And can I just say that I'm really pleased to see this. I know this is a specific request previously from the previous meeting of the Audit Committee. I think it's really useful, and I hope members agree that actually we see this, and this transparency about the earmarked reserves is brought to the fore for members to look at. I also note on page 92.5 that a further review of earmarked reserves is currently being carried out with services to identify further potential sums for repurposing towards the overall COVID-19 recovery strategy. The outcome of this review will be reported to the upcoming council budget setting meeting. Can I just ask on that, is where the review's taking place to identify items, why is the sole purpose for what they might be used for the overall COVID-19 recovery strategy? I'm trying to remember how that decision was made, that's what earmarked reserves should or could be used for, that are identified.
So I'm not sure I can perhaps give you a full answer to that, Convener, but all the balances have been going through a detailed review as to whether they are going to be fully spent, what they're going to be spent on, etc., and anything that's been considered that will not be fully spent for purposes is being then considered as part of repurposing. And that is a consideration that will be taken by senior officers along with the members as to how these funds should be properly repurposed, which would probably include how it may support the budget position going forward as well. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
I think so, Brian, because I just wanted clarification that the repurposing that any appropriate funds are identified that they could be used for is not already been determined that it will be for specifically COVID-19 recovery, and the options remain as to how they might be repurposed, if you see what I mean, within the general budget setting process as well. Isabel, is that?
Yes, Isabel McKnight, Chief Operating Officers, Community and Performance. Yes, I can probably help Brian. So we, myself and others on the call, have been part of that review, and Brian's absolutely correct, some of which will be identified for repurposing, but that repurpose bid or grant has yet to be identified, because some of these cannot be repurposed and used for other areas. Some are ring fenced, some might be grants that need to go back to the original source, so that's quite complicated and complex. Some may or may not support some of the COVID challenges and may be repurposed to a similar bid. However, all of that has yet to be detailed, and that would be a decision for members and for senior officers on senior officer advice. So Brian's correct. I think there's maybe just a missing word in the report that says they may be repurposed to support COVID, or they may be repurposed to support the budget. I think that's probably missing, Martin. Sorry, yeah. Councillor Errol.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thanks, Isabel. That just clarifies that. So thank you. Can I ask members any questions, queries, comments, anything on this one? Neil.
Probably just for clarity, Brian, there's a couple in here which they have language like all monies have now been spent, or it's now fully spent, or something like that. I'm taking it that's the difference. So that's because the reserve balance at 31st of March 2021 is the reserve at the beginning of the financial year. That when it says that they've been spent, that would normally imply to me that they have actually been spent and they're not just committed to the end of the financial year. Am I misreading that?
No, you're absolutely correct, Councillor, that
actually money's out the door.
That will mean the money has been spent within the year, and therefore, as from next year, there should be no balance carried forward under that particular.
So it's not necessarily that it's been spent up to date, it's that it will be spent, or it's been allocated to be spent by the end of the financial year.
Yes, so a number of deadlines are to the end of this financial year, based on the services understanding on where things are at.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Alistair.
Thank you. I've got a couple of specific ones. One which is page 94, the Transformation Fund. Now, clearly we have the script here which says what process it went through with the council. So this may be a legal question or a process question here. Having agreed through a committee to commit this money to this, the purpose, has a budgetary meeting of the council got the, would it be able to reallocate some of these funds? Is there the time limit involved here? So I really have a question about that specific fund.
Okay. Isabel, would that be yourself?
Yes, sorry, I'm just delaying putting my hand up. Yes, the answer would be yes. That would be part of George's budget paper. So if some of these funds were to be reallocated, that would form part of that, and that would include transformation. So transformation can mean many things. It could mean posts, it can mean specifics, it could mean to support some exit from the organisation in support of new skills, etc. So it can mean lots of things, but George, I can give you assurance that George will have that as part of his budget settlement.
Thank you. That's okay. Thank you for that answer. I presume that also applies to page 112, the Treasury Management Reserve, because that's almost talked about. 500k of the balance can be repurposed. So I presume that's the same answer for that one. Right, Isabel. Another question I have is on the Stirling Business Investment Fund. And I'm trying to see, going back to Councillor okay, the Benny's question, I imagine that the amount of the money in this fund, the fund of, okay, the 222,000, etc., was on the 1st of April 2021. And then it talks about a 70k being actually committed. So my question then is, what amount is left in that fund? Is it the 222, okay, minus, okay, the 70k?
Have you got a page, Alistair, please?
Yes, it's page, it's actually not easy to get the page on this one. It's looks like 111, but it's right in the margins of it. 111. It's the second last page, Chair. So.
Yes, we're all looking forward to the return of in-house printing, I suspect, but never mind. But
right, yeah.
So can I ask, is that Brian to respond to that one?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. This 70,000 that's been committed, it won't all be spent this financial year. It's actually committed over two financial years, so only part of it will be set against that reserve for this year, with the balance being set against it the following year.
And so I have another supplementary question, if you don't mind, Brian, onto this, is where did the money first of all come from? And was there criteria on, what's the broad criteria on the spend for this?
I think, but I would have to double check this, but I think this business fund was for when the council, if you maybe remember, had Seedco as a sort of a business that supported. And once that was wound down, there was funds left over within these particular organisations. So my understanding is that is the remainder of the wind up of businesses like Seedco, etc.
Okay, Chair, would it be a possibility to get some more background on this particular one, please?
Yes, I'm sure that could be supplied, Brian.
Yes, I'll take that point away and provide an update just exactly on the makeup of that fund and feedback.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much for these answers to these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alistair, you're next.
Yeah. Other side of the page, I think it's page 110. So it's just the good old car park trading account. From obviously it's reduced significantly from I think when we first saw the earmarked reserves pre-COVID. From that, and obviously a lot of that reduction will be due to, well, I believe will be due to the loss of revenue from parking due to the pandemic. But were we able to spend any of those earmarked reserves on improving the car parks or finding or anything else, or has all that reduction been as a result of making up for the loss of revenue?
Sorry, Brian.
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor. You're right. The impact of COVID has had a significant impact on the receipts generated for parking, and has really decimated the built-up reserves for this account, to the extent that actually the balances are fairly minimal now. That has restricted the opportunities that were available to invest in car parking, but there has been some developments, not least looking at digital use of purchasing car parking tickets as a means of getting away from the cash meters and that. And I know further opportunities have been considered as well, but certainly you're correct that I think due to the significant impact in this fund, it has restricted some of the opportunities that were being considered against car parking.
Yeah, thank you. I see Brian Roberts and Drew have both got their hands up on this one. Who wants to go first?
I'll come in first, Chair. Brian Roberts, Chief Operating Officer for Infrastructure and Environment. Councillor Majuri, thanks for your question. As Brian Richardson said, it's been reduced because of the impact and the reduction of the income for car parking, significantly down, projecting down less than 60%, and last year was even worse, obviously. So the question that you had around the type of activities that this can be spent on, absolutely, the terms of the decriminalised parking, excuse me, allows the money to be spent on improvements to the infrastructure, but quite clearly you need to have a balance to be able to allow that to happen. So the service, excuse me, the service is doing a review just now, trying to project what the income levels are going to be for next year, and are looking at the asset management plans and trying to forecast what work can be done. Within the car parking account itself, there is a maintenance and investment allocation anyway. So there will continue to be investment in ticket machines and upgrades to car parks, but clearly the balances allow more of that to be done. And the restrictions that's on the car parking account, because of decriminalised parking, means that it has to be spent on transport and parking related activities as well. So as Isabel said earlier, some of these accounts have got conditions that sit behind them. This is one that it couldn't be repurposed for other activities beyond what the purpose of decriminalised parking is.
Right. Yeah, no, I appreciate. Yeah, I mean, because I think it was nearly $1 million. Well, I'm sure it wasn't far off £1 million pre-COVID. So yeah, I appreciate it couldn't have been spent on social care or something. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah, pre-COVID, it was setting up about 800,000. Obviously, 2 years of significantly reduced income. That's been used to obviously fund the service during that period.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands up on this paper at all. So I'd like to thank officers for bringing that forward. As I've said, I think we all appreciate the detail on this and the information that's come forward. And I think this is probably something we'll want to see just embedded in the appropriate reporting to the Audit Committee when we're discussing this from a point of view of format and detail. So excellent, thank you for that. On that basis, that brings us to the end of the agenda. If I can ask people to note note the contents of that report. Thank you very much. I would just like to take, before everybody disappears, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank everybody, member of the committee, for your effort. This is the last one. This is the first meeting of the committee meetings in the last cycle, so before the elections. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for all your work and your efforts, and to the committee, and also to all the officers, to Gordon and his team that directly input, and to all the other officers that come and attend and answer questions on the wide-ranging reports we have. I appreciate everybody's time and effort in that respect. And on that basis, thanks very much and have a good day.
And thanks to you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.